recording now. All right, guys. I've got the cabinet of the Washington State Baseball Coaches Association with me today. We've got Brian Jackson from Graham-Kapowsin, Jesse Benedetti from East Valley, Yakima, and Glen Walker from Auburn-Mountain. So welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
Got it. And I've been making my background something that makes everybody feel a little more comfortable. So since there's three of you, I thought I would put the Mariners in the background. So we got Safeco Field there.
Nice.
I didn't want to put up Bobo Brayton Field and have Coach Walker get offended as a Zag up there.
I used to love that place.
Hey, you probably hit pretty good there, huh?
Yeah, did okay.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to start here. Question one, I'm going to start with Coach Benedetti, and then I'll give you guys a chance to kind of go around. But the first one is, what is your definition of mental toughness? And can you give kind of a example of how you teach it or develop it in your program?
I would say what we focus on is the phrase compete with character. We have it plastered everywhere in our clubhouse, in our dugout. And I think mental toughness comes from having strong character and from knowing how to compete. And so, I mean, we will do drills or different things in practice or have discussions, increase the competition level. But we actually I bet we spend more time just dealing with character. And I truly feel that if we can have good character guys that are out there competing every day, then mental toughness is something we don't need to preach.
Good. Coach Jackson, how about you?
It's a tough one. I think that it's a topic that's discussed all the time. So when you sent that question, I was kind of perplexed a little bit. And so I feel like I don't have an answer. But I think that what I came to was it seems that over the years that I've coached, mental toughness seems to come with either the individual and or the team. They come with it. They come with that character set, whatever they have, and then we have to continue to build upon that. And I think that, putting kids, like Coach Benedetti said, in opportunities to compete daily will create that. But I think, I don't know, I think that mental toughness comes from within the kid. I think they bring that, the athlete, the student athlete, the person, I think they bring that when they enter the field, even as a freshman. I think it can be built upon and developed as well through situations. But in practice, like Jesse said, we just compete all the time, whether it's in a scrimmage or a team drill or individual drills for popsicles or running or hot dogs and hamburgers, all T-shirts. We give out player of the week T-shirts, and we incorporate how we're working in practice for those kinds of things. And so, and the reason I kind of think that it comes from the individual, I don't know. I just was thinking about it, and George Washington I think he was in the French and Indian War, and he said that he found the buzz of the bullets charming. And I don't think you can prepare for that. And so I think that when you get into that moment of competition, you just kind of have it or you don't. And so I think if we can capitalize on that and build on it, what they have, that's how we do it. And I think it's just a tough thing to coach.
Yeah, awesome. I love the social studies teacher perspective right there. That's good stuff. Coach Walker, how about you?
Funny, Brian. I was just going to say that, Kevin. Adding in that element of the academics to that was outstanding, Coach Jackson. So, hey, I agree on the intrinsic value of mental toughness. I think it's something that starts with the kids and something that they have coming in. But I also believe that it's something that can be built upon. I think that by putting yourself into those tough situations on a daily basis, and as coaches, that's what we try to do every day, is to give our kids something that they can come out of practice being tougher than they were going in, whether it be, running drills and making them go beyond their comfort level, doing those things. But I also believe that it's simple as baseball teaches you mental toughness, and the kids that can really learn that part of the game can go a long way, even with a reduced skill level. because this game is a game of failure, because everything that we do on a daily basis on a pitch-by-pitch basis is either success or failure. And learning to deal with those failures is, in and of itself, going to create that mental toughness. How you respond to adverse situations is kind of what we strive to teach our kids. And the response is all about, we're all about the response versus the action, right? And whether you strike out, although we're not fans of it, but if you strike out, how do you respond to that strikeout? We don't want you necessarily jumping for joy, but we also, we don't want you so far down the dumps that you can't go out and compete on defense or on the bump or wherever your next opportunity is. And so we put a lot of emphasis on the response part. It's about the process, not the result. And the work that you put in will then in turn pay dividends on the work that you get out. And when we can put our kids into those situations where they are going to failure and they're going to be uncomfortable, and they're going to have to dig deep, dig down, they will get more mentally tough than they were coming in. I also agree that, kids can be really, really soft, and no matter how hard you push them, they may not create that toughness. But I think that as an athlete coming in, they can definitely improve on that part of the game.
Yeah. Awesome.
Sorry, coaches,
No, go ahead.
but what Glenn said is a good point, is about, maybe it's not about setting them up for mental toughness, but the mental aspect of, leading by example and walking them through that in all of those situations or the responses. I think that is part of how that grows too. You can probably set up a situation drill wise or in games to become mentally tough, but, by reflecting on that, having kids reflect on that and process that we don't get a lot of time to do that, especially in Western Washington where it's raining, So let's take time to think through what we have here and how we develop our response in the future rather than continue to react to those negative actions. And so that's a good point by Coach, I think.
He also,
One last, sorry.
Go ahead. You got it?
Yeah, so we do a couple of things in our practices that seem relatively insignificant. You might say, well, teach kids how to strike out. I learned something I learned at Gonzaga. We'll teach kids how to, run out an infield ground ball, be out at first base, and how to respond. Take the helmet off, hand it to coach, hustle to your position, and be ready to go defensively. We teach kids to take a strikeout where we'll just have a kid get to the plate, call strike 3 on him, and he has to respond by going back to the dugout appropriately, putting his helmet in the helmet box, setting his bat down, and getting on the fence and being a positive example for the rest of the team. We'll even take, and then on the second side, I take that down even into the little league kids, and that's a struggle. You got kids that cry when they strike out, and they'll come over, and the first thing I say is, "What's your response?" You need to toughen up a little bit. And teaching them that early on, I think that's important too. They learn to deal with those failures as a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old. And by the time they get to us, we can work on a little higher level stuff. Sorry, Jesse, go ahead.
No, I was just going to piggyback on what you said about it. You mentioned process, and I think the kids that show the most mental toughness thrive in the process and don't necessarily concern themselves too much with the outcomes. They just get back to thriving through the process.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think that's one of the places where guys get a little bit kind of uncomfortable with teaching the mental game or talking about it is, like I was talking to my coaches over here in Pullman, and we had great weather for the first 2 weeks. And I was like, man, I haven't gotten to any of that kind of heads up baseball stuff where we're talking about signals and routines and that sort of stuff. And my assistant coach goes, we need to be on the yard. And it's like, yeah, how do you, especially in a place like Western Washington or over here when it's snowing and stuff, like how do you give up time in your practice to go inside and work on classroom stuff? And so a couple of years ago for us, we started just kind of incorporating that, like Coach Walker was saying, into some of our drills. And like, okay, round 1 you're hitting with less than 2 strikes. Round 2 it's your 2-strike approach. And so we want to see you guys choke up and go through those things that we think are important. Or we'll do a routine round where they get 5 swings, and at anywhere in those 5 swings, the pitcher will stop and say whatever it is that we're going to use to trigger them. And the kids have to go through their routine where they take a deep breath and they focus and they start their at bat over again. And that's real helpful, because then, those kids kind of aren't just taking hack. They stop, they kind of have to process, evaluate where they're at, and then get ready to go for the next pitch. So I think there's little ways you can do it, like you guys have mentioned, to kind of incorporate it. But I also think it's kind of hard because a lot of guys think, hey, this is classroom stuff. We got to go and meet and talk. And they're kind of hesitant to give up their time on the yard because, like you said, Coach, we have so little time out there with them. We need to be teaching the game as much as anything.
Right. No, those are good things. We started something about, I don't know, probably, 6-7 years ago now, where every Monday, obviously not this year, we would have what we call reflections meetings. And every Monday the kids would meet in the classroom and we would go through what were your goals for last week? Did you achieve them? What are your goals for this week? Are there any issues we need to deal with? Are kids not getting along? And we took that time to say, okay, we're going to deal with all of the team issues that might be coming up. We'll talk about goal setting. We'll talk about our team rules. We do all that stuff, go over our playbooks during that 30 to 60-minute session every Monday. The kids will fill out a form, reflections form, and hand it in. And then once we leave that meeting, that's your time to complain and talk about issues that are bothering you. After that, it's all business on the field, right? And so it gives the kids an opportunity to bring those issues that might be coming up, the conflicts that kids are having within the team, and talk about them in a safe environment where I say, everything that happens here, get it out in the open. Once we leave here, it's done, right? Something that's been, I think, a big thing for us the last few years.
That's great.
That's so cool, Coach. There's so many ideas. I stole one from Mike Williams. I don't want to keep going here, but same thing that they used at PLU about surveying kids weekly, whether they were compliant or invested. And then they rated their teammates also on that. And so we were able to take that information weekly last year and use it in the same kind of thing. It just allowed us to reflect and talk and get things out in the open. It's really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's great. All right, you guys want to move on to question 2?
Sure.
All right. So this one's about working with high school hitters. And, I know it's hard. We see all kinds of resources and information on the internet about hitting and how to teach hitting, but a lot of that stuff's geared towards Division I guys and professional guys. And I always find it's kind of hard to simplify that for the high school kids. So that was kind of what I was thinking here. What are a couple of the most important things you guys think about or teach or think that high school hitters need? And how do you kind of develop those things in practice? And Coach Jackson, we'll start with you.
I used to think I was a pretty good hitting coach until I started talking with Hyatt over there at East Valley. And so it seems like every time I went over there a couple times and watched him coach and chatted with him and took videos of it, and I reviewed him and watched him. And then, we talk in hotel rooms till 8 p.m. and then we go to bed, Yeah. But I just seems like the more I listen, the more confused I get. And it's a great question. And so I was thinking about your question, and I guess the most important thing that I think in teaching high school hitters, especially where I'm at now or where I've been, is that, high school hitters are just that, kind of what you said, they're high school hitters, and you're taking a real average athlete. And I think to make them better, I think this is just what I came up with when you asked the question, rather than a litany of drills and mechanics and things, was I think if we can make them have a great approach and try to hit a fastball and be balanced and dynamic and explosive in their swing throughout that sequence, I think that's the most important. And then if we can take the minutia of it and break it down by individual, I think we can teach kids to be successful. But one of the things that I've seen that frustrates me more than anything in regard to hitters, and it's easy to say as a coach, well, gee whiz, back in the old days, we hit rocks with sticks and stuff and we became great hitters because we did that all summer long and things like that. and kids are in cages all the time and in facilities, but I guess just being athletic and explosive and competitive at the plate, knowing your pitch and taking an approach. Obviously, that's what everybody talks about. The approach is so important, but just that, being an athlete in the box, and being athletic in the swing, I think you can take kids from that standpoint and make them better. And as far as drills and such, one of my favorites is the high, excuse me, fellas, is a high inside tee and trying to drive that back up the middle in cages. And I think that creates a real sense of lower half and awareness and getting your hands to the zone. And then like Jesse was saying, and I think you had mentioned too, Coach, is just having situational hitting in your live or BP drills on the field. We try to give 5-3-1 swings, 2-1 swings, and you're out, and make them value that rather than just getting in the cage and repeating that hack. So that's kind of how I was feeling about that.
Good. Coach Walker, how about you?
So we've kind of created a philosophy and an approach, and right, wrong, or indifferent, it's something that we believe in, and we've used every time out, all year long, or every year that we come out, and it's a selective aggressive approach, and it's very similar to what most people do. My thought is there's two parts of hitting that I really strive for, and that's balance and timing. If you're on balance and you have good timing, you're going to hit. If you're able to see the ball and pitch recognition, all those things come into play. But if you have good balance and you have good timing, you're going to be okay. And as Coach said, we don't always get the best athletes or the best hitters that come to our programs. We don't get to select, which is great, and I love that. I love the fact that we have to teach the kids every single day. With that being said, you get a lot of different swings and a lot of different mechanical pieces with every kid. Some that come from other facilities that have had great coaching or not so good coaching, and those that have never been coached. So we really focus on the process. We spend a lot of time in group circles where we'll just go, relax hands and then load, trigger, contact, extension, and finish. And it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's progression that they go through. And it's every single day that we're inside that we start our hitting, we start with that. And when we're outside, live normal situations, we'll go through it 2 or 3 times a week just to make sure that they know the parts of the swing that we want to emphasize, where your hands are at, your grip, all those other things come into play as well. But the bottom line is be on balance and be on time, and then recognize the pitch. And so in order to do that, we've talked about this already, and I think everybody's probably on the same page with it, is we want our kids to be uncomfortable, right? You want your kids to not get 75-mile-an-hour fastballs right down the can, although for the process of BP, that's the quickest and most efficient way of doing it, right? You just throw BP fastballs and they hit and they feel great and they get out of the cage. And I think maybe there's a place for that. It's, warm-ups. But when they're in the cage for live BP, it needs to be, sack, drag, hit and run, right side, score them, squeeze, 3 swings, get out. They have a process. They have a every single pitch has a different meaning, so they have to think about it, get in the box, execute, get in the box, execute. We'll do things. One of my favorites we started doing a few years ago is we'll have a couple of different, but one of them is we have our hitting tunnel, and with a pitcher in front of them, and then off to the side we'll have side front toss BP, so at an angle toss. And so you get 3 pitches from the guy in front of you, and then you get 3 pitches from the angle. So it keeps the kids makes the kids keep their hands back and drive the ball the other way. Another one that we like to do is, you're in the cage, you get your BP set, And then outside the cage, we have a live guy that's throwing as hard as he can possibly throw, mixing in curveballs, and you get 10 pitches. And of those, you might swing 6 times because you've seen 6 strikes. The idea being that taking a ball, in essence, is as good as swinging a bat, because you're learning where your strike zone is. You're learning that pitch recognition. And so it's a little scary because you got balls flying all over the place coming back at your BP guys. But if you have a couple of young arms, I can't do it anymore, but they can ramp it up a little bit, throw change-ups and curveballs, and you can have 2 sets going. And then the kids are always kind of, being challenged. And I think that's important.
That's great. Coach Benedetti, how about you?
Yeah, I've had the privilege of working with that Craig Hyatt guy for 20-some years. And so he's definitely been someone to learn from for me. And I would encourage anybody, too, if they have time to watch some videos from Doug Lotta at the Ball Yard in Northern California. He's brilliant as well. But I think a lot of what Glen said, we try to focus on as well as, we'll at our level, we'll face a guy in first end of a doubleheader throwing 90 plus, and then the second pitcher will be 75. And so that timing piece is such a crucial part of hitting. And so I think we spend time in our practices dealing with timing. And then as far as the technique of the swing go, Doug one time said that he fixes setups, not swings. And I didn't realize what that really meant actually until this year, and just watching some kids and how their setups create such a poor swing. And so, like Glenn even talked about, the getting to balance, and that is so crucial because balance allows your eyes to see. And so being able to see the pitch longer, when kids can get to balance, you'll hear them talk about how much better they see the ball. I think that all starts with their setup. I mean, there's kids that create their setup to such an extent that the only thing they can do is hook a ball. And so kind of fixing that kind of stuff as they come in. So I think the first part for us is the timing and setups of kids. And then we want them to take ownership. I think one of you guys said that as well, that we'll prescribe a group of drills that we'll take everybody through drills on hitting specific ones. And then once we can kind of figure out what a kid needs best, we'll kind of encourage them what drills they should focus on. And so they take ownership and they start off with their drills. They know what they are and they practice them, and they take ownership in their first 15 minutes of cage time, just working on their drills that are specific to helping their swing. And so after that, kind of that ownership, I think we go into that challenge piece that you guys both said about, I mean, putting a machine on the mound or 2 of them on the mound, fastball, curveball, and just blowing the kids up and just, work on something harder because they make the game easier through that process.
That's great. Coach, when you do that and give those kids those individual drills, do you give them like a menu of drills to pick from? And that's awesome.
That's what Craig's brilliant at that. So he'll actually mess with the kids' minds a little bit to lead them into which drill is best for them by just complimenting certain things when he knows what drill is going to be best for the kid as far as moving forward. He'll critique a kid and then they'll pick that drill. It's kind of cool how that kind of happens.
That's awesome. Really good stuff.
I stole that from Craig last year too, and started using it last year. And it's funny how when you offer the options up for those kids, I do it every 1 or 2 or 3rd day and ask them, it's pretty standard, but what they need or what they want. And it allows me to give them the opportunity to not only develop confidence, but feel like they're directing their learning. And it's really cool to allow them to do that.
That's
and
awesome.
They get more out of it. And then you can hold them accountable more by that too. Well, you chose this drill. This is what you wanted to do. So what were you working on and what did you get out of it? And then how do we need to look forward from there? It's pretty cool.
And understanding the purpose of each one. I mean, that's a key.
Yeah, that's great. Very nice. Great answers, guys. I like it. Moving on now to team stuff. Question 3 is describe your favorite team drill and why is it important and what are you trying to accomplish with it? And Coach Walker, we'll start with you on this one.
We have really one kind of main drill that we do consistently. We try to be creative in the things that we do on a daily basis. We don't like to be repetitive. We don't like to. If the kids know what we're going to do before the day, then we failed, right? If they know, well, geez, we're going to take BP, we're going to throw, we're going to take some ground balls, we're going to take BP, we're going to run, we're going to get out. Then, in my opinion, we failed because we're letting them get bored. And so we try to keep things creative. We try to keep things fresh. We try to keep them on their toes a little bit. But the one drill, kind of our go-to, I call it 21 outs. Another ZAG drill. I think a lot of people do it. It's perfect 21, 21 outs, perfect 7. I mean, whatever you want to call it. But basically, we've done it with a coach fungo. Okay, and you got, usually we have our JV team run live for our varsity kids. So we can keep our varsity kids on the field, all working together. Because we combine the two programs, JV and varsity, always practice together, this is kind of the one time we pull apart, right? We got to have our shortstop, second baseman, our game shortstop, second baseman working together and whatever. So we'll do coach fungo, where I'll just usually hit and I kind of pick out where I want the ball to go. I've let assistants do it as well, but I like to kind of script that out in my head. We do some tee stuff where we'll have the kids hit live off a tee or a front toss, which can be fun, but it doesn't give, you basically work with the middle of the field that way because nobody can pull the ball down the third base line or hit a flip double down the right field line. And then every now and then I'll grab a bat and I'll have a pitcher lob a ball in and I'll literally hit live off off a pitcher, again, to kind of give the kids that live feel. It's a little bit harder to mandate where the ball goes. In my old age, I'm less likely to hit it where I want. But basically, we just run through all the different plays that could possibly happen. You can do your normals, double plays. You got bunt coverages. You got first and thirds. You can force rundowns. You've got double cuts. Everything that could happen in a game can happen in 21 outs. And the ultimate goal, obviously, is you have to be perfect, right? If you make a mistake, you start back at 0, right? And so that's the intent, is that it gives kids, a reachable, achievable goal, something that they have to work for. But it's more than just fielding and throwing. It's hustling back your positions. It's responding to a mistake or an error. And so what we started doing a few years ago is the pick-me-up rule. The shortstop boots the ball. Normally we would start back over at 0. We say, okay, look, you get a second chance. If one of your teammates picks you up on the next play, we stay put. So, instead of it just being, God dang that kid, he keeps booting the ball. Now you have an opportunity to pick them up, which is ultimately what we want. We want the response to be, it's all right, I got you, right? Give me the ball, I got you. We'll turn the double play, whatever. And so the next ball comes out, we complete the play, no harm, no foul, we keep moving on. Because in a game, that's what you want. The shortstop boots the ball, guy on first, next ground ball, we turn double play. Nobody ever knew it happened. So that's kind of our go-to drill. With that, before that, we'll do ball in the air, communication stuff. But we do that probably 2 to 3 times a week, leading up to games, and then usually once a week or so with games, because we want the kids full out, 100%, 100% on their arms, laying out. If they don't lay out on a ball that they should have, we start over. I mean, all those things, it's just as game-like as we can make it, and the kids love it.
That's awesome. And I think there you go. There's a perfect example of teaching mental toughness and that right there in your drill by having something like the pick-me-up rule. That's great. I just wrote that one down for sure. Coach Benedetti, how about you?
I think as far as the best team drill we've come up with, we'll do similar to what Glenn said, but I love that pick-me-up thing too. If I stick with coaching, that's what I would add to it. That's awesome. But we started, it had to be 8-10 years ago, maybe even longer. We called something scripts, and it's more of an infield situation. It's designed to create stress on the kids and throw out every game situation that's going to be imaginable in about an 8 to 10 minute span. And a lot of times we do these, we play on Saturdays and Tuesdays. So we'll throw them out there on Mondays and Fridays, and we'll do 1 set or 2 sets, just depending. And what they are is, like, we might start with our infield out there, outfielders running, pitcher on the bump. One of my coaches is coaching third base, giving signs to a runner on first base. And we have a set script of what we're doing. And so he'll call maybe bunt, so the runner at first knows what it is. I'll call a bunt defense as I'm up at the plate with the fungo, and we're competing right then and there. And it just takes a couple seconds. And every play we do, whether it's a bunt or first and third or a ground ball or whatever, we teach the kids to overrun the base so we get back picks. And every back pick leads to a rundown. So we're getting a ton of rundowns, a ton of thrown behind runners, and a ton of situations. And so what might happen is we do that bunt. We get the runner out at second base. We'll ask the runner at second base to stay. Then we'll go first and second bunt. And I might hit a ground ball like it's a hit and run. And the kids are playing it live and reacting to the situation. It's bang, 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 bang. They're back to their spots after every play. In about a 10-minute span, we'll get through about 12 situations. We'll hit every bunt, every first and third, and we relate it to who we're playing. So if we're playing SELA, we know they like to slug bunt if we crash, so we'll do slug bunts. We'll intro hit and runs with it, on all different things. And so we'll get through nearly every possible situation in an infield that they will ever see in about a 10-minute span. And sometimes we do it twice in a day. Like, we'll do 2 sets with 2 different pitchers and 2 different infields, so everybody gets a shot at it. But that creates that havoc, that stress, and we can hold kids accountable for how they're reacting in those situations as well during that. I think that's kind of been the best thing we've incorporated.
Nice.
I listened to that podcast the other day, Jesse, and that was pretty cool. I listened, so I've heard that twice now in a week. And so I'm going to try to incorporate some of that. I had a whole bunch of favorite drills. One of my favorites from a long time ago is just having 2 teams and just running 9 to 5s, on and off the field. I think if we can incorporate that as part of our culture, guys run into their spot on and off the field, it can be a fun drill rather than a burden. And we've been doing it forever. And it's just, you guys probably have heard of it. Just 9 of your guys got to beat 5 of their guys off the field, and then you switch positions every time you do it. So it can be a conditioning thing as well as fun, but it's part of, build that culture that hustling on and off the field is good. Another one that I like that I've built on since my years at Green River was my coach there took the old Polk fundamental drill series, and we did that twice a week. And so I've modified that into our pitchers infielder, and we have an A and a B and a C and then a template. And so as long as we have enough coaches to do it, we can run the A and the B like clockwork, and kids are just running through it as fast as they can, whatever it is, double play balls, blocking balls for catchers, fielding balls at the backstop, throwing down the first, all that pitchers infield stuff. But then what we are able to do too is just take that template and modify it a little bit depending on our coaches and the players that we have. And it's just so fast, and the repetitions get so many reps out of it. I really like that drill because kids have fun with it. It's never the same. It's fast paced, and they're always moving, and they can really get a sense of feeling that repetition and getting better with that. And lastly, I like the 21 outs idea too. But we play 2-ball, and then we play 2-ball, win the inning, which is a little bit different. So rather than just, each team scoring as many runs as they can, depending on the situation, if they win the inning, then they get extra points. And so it kind of gives them a little bit more competition with that one. So I really like that one. Kids have a ton of fun. And last but not least, I like what we call playoff hitting, where it sounds antithetical to reps and intensity and purpose, but every once in a while we just send guys out and we shag, and guys hit at the plate, and nobody's really ever standing around, and then guys are hitting in cages with specific drills, but it gives me an opportunity while we do that. I kind of call it playoff hitting, and then or sunshine hitting, because we never get any sun, but it gives me an opportunity to run around and talk to each one of the players. So if we can get to that once a week, where I can have a 3 to 5 minute conversation with each player while we're running that hitting, that, playoff hitting or big league hitting, it's really cool for me, because I get to talk to kids. And so I had a conversation with a kid 3 years ago who never said a word. And all of a sudden I asked him, how have your college plans changed? And then he wouldn't stop talking. The 2 to 3 minute conversation turned into about 8. And so it's just a good opportunity to incorporate that time to reflect with kids too. So I like that drill.
Nice. That's great. Coach Walker, how much time do you put into your practice plan for 21 outs?
Not much. I just know that we just, pencil in that we're doing 21 outs. Our practice plan, I usually put in about 2 hours, hour and a half to 2 hours a day, scripted it. As far as the 21 outs, scripting that out, it's fluid, right? So if a kid boots a ball and what should have been a single turns into a double, or ball gets through, whatever, there's no way to really script out. It's just all about, if I got a guy on first, we'll go bunt coverage. If I got a guy on first and third, we'll go first and third, and we'll have a pitcher, I'll throw him a ball, and so now he's coming set and actually tossing one in. I'll choose to bunt it, I'll choose to hit and run on it, or maybe we'll steal a guy out of it and then we go first and third. So there's different scripts that we run, but they're not done beforehand.
Yeah. Nice.
I've got
very cool.
One other drill, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I do infielders, but depending on how many coaches you have, we call it 4 fungo drill. Basically, you have as many coaches as you can give up. And so our philosophy has always been no staying around. Everybody's active. If you're standing for more than 5 or 10 seconds, then we're not doing our jobs. So instead of having a line of 7 guys at shortstop, so you're hitting a third, and then they get done, and then you hit to short, and then they get, the kids are getting cold. We play on the west side. These kids are freezing to death. So we get as many coaches as we can, and we're rapid firing, and we'll go around, at them, glove hand, backhands, and then from that point, we'll go, 5-4-3, 6-3, no throw, or 5-4-3, no throw, and 6-3. And then we'll go 6-4-3, and 3-6-3, or 3-5 or whatever. So we just kind of move it around so that everybody's getting a different look what potential balls could be hitting a game. And we always go at them, forehand, glove hand in every situation. So they have to work, all those different angles and throw positions.
That's great.
That's a daily thing for us with our infield set.
Nice. A lot of great stuff right there. Anything else that pop into people's minds before we move on to pitchers?
So many things.
All right, I'll move us on then. Question 4. We'll start with you, Coach Benedetti. What does a week look like for your pitching staff, and how do you manage your two-way guys? And kind of what's important to you that your pitchers kind of do routinely, or what does that look like for you guys consistently?
So, we have a completely different schedule than the other 2 Yahoos.
I'm learning that the hard way.
Yeah, so we're Tuesday singles, Saturday doubles. And so I'll just kind of, I guess, go from once we get going into a game schedule. We actually have all our guys in pre-practice. We do Jaeger bands, wrist weights, and pile balls, whether they're a pitcher or a C-squad kid that's an outfielder. Every kid goes through that. So, but that's a piece I thoroughly believe in as far as our throwing goes and our throwing protocols. And then pitchers have specific ones that they'll do on a different day, whether it's their off day. If they haven't thrown, if it's like a number 5 guy that hasn't thrown a whole lot, they'll have different things they do during the week with plyo balls as well. But all our practices start with that, regardless if they threw that day or didn't throw that day. If we throw on a Tuesday, Wednesday's more of a recovery day. We'll do some strength pieces in there. I like to do a bunch of 2-pound, I call it the dumbbell work, that used to just strengthen the shoulders, the deceleration, the back and the front of the shoulders, and that kind of stuff that we'll do. And again, if a kid didn't throw Tuesday, they might do some pull downs or a flat ground or a bullpen, just depending. And then, but we try to do flat grounds almost every day. It doesn't have to be high intensity, but as they're coming in from playing long toss or catch, we want them playing with their pitches and doing flat grounds a little bit every day. And then I guess as far as if they're a position guy, which is always our case, I don't know about you guys, but my shortstop seems to always be a pitcher.
Yeah.
My and so, and third baseman for some, they're always our pitchers. And so just communicating that with the other coaches so that any tenderness or anything going on, or if it's going to be a bullpen day or a heavy throw day, or they threw the day before, that we're kind of taking it easy on them on that Wednesday or Thursday. We might throw a light bullpen later on in the week, like on a Thursday or Friday, just kind of a touch and base with kids to solve maybe a problem that they had with some spin on a pitch or technique stuff we saw in a game or whatever. We've been really blessed to have a pretty deep staff until what would have been this year. We were going to have a deep staff at all. So we've always been blessed with a deep staff. So we were going a Tuesday guy, probably as a starter, and 2 different starters on Saturdays. And so we were able to do a lot of different things like that during the week.
Nice. Coach Walker?
Boy, so we have always had a pitching coach. And I'm not that guy.
Nice.
I'm just not. He comes to me and says, "So hey, coach, when can I throw flat grounds?" And my response is always, "You tell me when you need to. You tell me when your guys need to throw, because whether they're, like Jesse says, our kids, I think we're all kind of probably in the same boat. We don't have a lot of POs. Even the guys that I've had that have gone on to play college baseball as pitchers were also position players, because that's just who they are. But so they're pitchers first, right? We always say, look, if you're my starting shortstop and my number 1 pitcher, then you've got to be a pitcher first, because that's where we're going to win more ball games, unless you're a really bad shortstop, which we've had too. So we want flat grounds at least once a week. If they're our number 1, we don't like Jesse has Tuesday, Saturday. We might go Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, or some kind of semblance of that. So we don't have like a set rotation. My number 1 guy last year, Nate Wheeldryer, through the first game of whatever set we had. We'd always go back to back with the team. So he'd throw the first game, unless we had a 3-game week and maybe he came in and somehow got disrupted in the rotation with the amount of games that we played. But for the most part, we have turf, and so we have pretty good consistency with our game schedule. So our number 1 will usually throw the first game of the doubleheader or the back-to-back games. Try to get 1 flat ground a week. We always start our throwing program with all of our kids position throwing, and every position has a different setup to what their jobs are as far as to get loose. I don't believe in playing catch. I believe in practicing throwing, right? So our infielders, from the time that they start just playing short toss all the way through long toss and back, they have a script. our pitchers do too. And so they'll do that, at least if they're a two-way guy, they'll do that 2 to 3 days a week with the pitchers, do the pitching version of it. And then the other 2 days, they'll do the infielder version or the outfielder version or whatever. Work on, picks, work on their sets, throw a lot of change-ups in their warm-ups, try to do a lot of the things that we would do in flat grounds and bullpens during their throwing program, so that we don't necessarily have to rely so heavily on the bullpens. I don't know that we've done an amazing job getting our pitchers ready week to week, but we've always had dudes, so it hasn't been as an issue. You're rolling out dudes throwing 88 to 90 consistently, you win a lot of ball games whether they're ready to go or not. So again, like Jesse said, that wasn't the case this year, so I don't know that I said anything worthwhile, but there you go.
No, that's great. No, I think the best thing that you said is I have a pitching coach and I let him work.
Yeah.
That's good. There's something to be said for that. Coach Jackson, how about you?
I kind of I was hoping not to have to answer this question, because I think this has been, at every single baseball clinic, at every clinic in America, especially in the Pacific Northwest, this needs to be the question that's answered. How do you develop and work your pitching staff in a 3-game rainy week? I asked Mike Williams this question a long time ago. He goes, it doesn't matter. I just throw my number 1 guy. The next game, the number 2 guy throws. And the next game, the number 3 guy throws. And that's it. And it's your time to throw, you throw. And I know there was more to that, but I've been perplexed by this question for 28 years, and I still haven't come up with an answer. And I think guys like Jesse got it on easy street over there because they have the weather, and guys can just throw consistently, except for last year with the snow. But I guess I just want the things that I think we do is this is part of my favorite team drill too, is we scrimmage early on. If the sun's out and the diamond is dry, we scrimmage. And so it's not just where we got 18 guys or 40 guys standing around, but we modify it so that we're working about 8 on 8, and we got guys working all over the field. But I get to work with pitchers. And if they come in they've already thrown a 60-pitch bullpen on day 1, then I can adjust for a pitcher. If they haven't thrown any, I can adjust. But I work with pitchers on the mound as we go. So that gives me a full 8 to 14 days to work with a pitcher on the mound while he's throwing live at hitters. And it goes really fast, and we're working all over the field. But at the same time, we're getting scrimmages. So the first day of practice this year, my pitchers threw anywhere between 25 and 40 pitches, and the hitters got 3 at-bats. And so that's a great drill for us, and we're essentially playing baseball. And I really enjoy that, and I get to work with the pitchers. But to really answer your question, it's kind of what Jesse was saying a little bit, is I go by the individual and how they feel, and we try to throw a flat ground as many days as we can, weather permitting, facility permitting, coach permitting. Some years are different. And then we throw on game day, and then we adjust on that next day as a day off or recovery day with physical work, maybe not even throwing at all. For instance, if he's a 2-way guy, and like our best pitcher is our shortstop this year as well, and or not. And then the 3rd day is flat, 4th day is a light bullpen, and then we go again. And so I've just struggled with it, kind of like Glenn said. I'm not saying that, Coach, but I just don't know if I've been very good at it. And one of the things that we do is that I just try to focus more. You said something about routines, but routines with our pitchers is I had a great moment this year with our guy that you guys, our SETI, our big guy, Glen and Jesse, that Jesse, you saw last year. I try to teach our guys to throw off-speed fastballs and throw to zones and throw through zones. I don't know if that makes any sense, but we don't try to throw strikes. We try to throw the pitch through a zone, zones 1, 2, 3, and 4 across the plate. And if I can teach them that and to mix speeds on their fastballs by their junior year, then I think we've made it. And regardless of their skill level or their talent or how hard they throw. But this year, our guy SETI, in our first week of practice, I didn't say much to him, and he went out and he was mixing speeds and throwing to zones, and it was great. It took him 3 years to get that. Maybe I'm not a very good coach, but he finally did it, and I think it worked. So it took 3 years, but it really worked. And I don't know if that makes sense. I might have to break that down a little bit more, but gosh, it's awesome once the pitchers can figure that out. That element, throwing to a zone, throwing through a zone, and mixing that speed on that fastball. And we work on that in flat ground a ton, whether it's just a fastball or if it's a curveball or a change or whatever. And so that's daily how we do that. So, like I said, I don't know if I wish you had the answer. This needs to be the number one clinic at every clinic from here on out. If we can establish that, and that way we can.
Or just you all come to Eastern Washington where the sun shines, God's country.
That's all it does. My wife convinced me to move over here based off the fact that it never, ever rains on this side of the mountains. Not once. Please.
It's a game changer. No brainer, right?
Yeah. No, I think that was great. And I think you guys all kind of approach it in a little bit different way. And again, the reason I think this is good stuff and important for us is you guys all talked about the limitations that you have as high school coaches, whether it be weather or facilities or your coaching staff or the talent of your kids, all that stuff. And it's stuff you don't necessarily hear about when you're listening to a pro or college guy talking about, his routines and what they do and all that. As helpful as that is and as nice as it is to listen to that, sometimes it doesn't translate to what we're trying to do. So I think that's great.
One of the big things that we try to do also is get our kids to 2.5 hours. When I first started coaching way back 3 years ago, we would go 3.5 hours and not even blink an eye. We go 5, 6, 7 days a week. And I didn't care. And now I think that it's important that we're being efficient in changing how we're teaching and instructing, and so that the kids can get out of there with some time left. And I don't know if it's a change in me or if it's a change in the kids, but I just, there no longer do we extend our practices to where, it's 7:30 at night and we're still trying to get off the field.
Yeah, I hear you.
I think that's really important. Sorry, I won't talk anymore.
No. Anything else you guys want to share before we wrap up here?
Kappa Coach, I wonder what your thoughts are on some of these things as well. Is there anything that popped out that you said, hey, what I got, even maybe not necessarily on exact topic with what we talked about, but is there any, was anything pop up in your mind that you're thinking of?
Yeah. You put me on the spot here. I kind of like asking everybody the questions. No, I think that everything that you guys mentioned, there was one or two things in terms of the pitchers that I kind of said, yeah, we do something like that where coach, we like to use the J bands and stuff to get them warmed up. And then Coach Walker, you talking about having a good pitching coach and letting that guy work. I think that's really important, is to find that guy. And I've been really fortunate to have really good pitching coaches, everywhere I've been. So that's always been good. Getting guys live as much as possible early, Coach Jackson, like you said, just because like we've all talked about, guys are in the cage all year long and they're just hitting BP fastballs. And all of a sudden someone's trying to get them out and everything changes. So, I think that's good. We kind of have tried to establish sort of like a game day, recovery day, flat ground day, bullpen day, like Coach mentioned. But that's challenging. One thing that I got from the Hawksworths that's been really good, it seems like kids, for whatever reason, are always a little bit unsure of their changeup unless they're really confident with it. And he always made our guys throw their changeup at 90 feet. Yeah, and they really had to extend through that. And I think that that's a really powerful thing for those kids to have to feel that. So that's always something that stuck for me. Your team drills are great. We do variations of that. One thing I like that I took from my dad, we call it quarters. And there's a great podcast. I think it's on ABCA. It's a guy, his name's, I think it's Nicolarette is his last name. He's from down in Louisiana. And he has this awesome podcast where he talks about how he would set up Little League practice. And instead of having like one kid hitting and 10 kids standing around and that kind of thing, he'd break it up into snippets, and he had these different pieces where it would go from like, put the kids at shortstop and have the kids run bases and roll ground balls. And so you have half your kids doing each. So they're learning how to run through the base and break down all that stuff we teach them. And then they're working on throwing a guy out with a runner, and you can compete a little bit. And then he takes it to the next phase and kind of adds a little bit more to each piece. And so that's kind of always something we've done with our team drills is we'll go run, stretch, throw, do that. And then we'll come in and do some sort of base running. And then we go right into our quarters. And the first quarters will be runners at each base. And our hitter is bunting. In the first round, they bunt right. Second round, they bunt left. Runners at first and second are getting their reads off of a bunt. And the runners at third are getting their reads off a safety squeeze. So you got no standing around because 4 guys are going, and there's 1 or 2 deep at each base. So it's moving. Then we go to hit and run. We'll put our infield out there, and they're defending the runner at first base. The other 2 runners at second and third, we just say those guys are imaginary. The hot runner's first and the guy at home. So the guys at the plate now are hit and run. We'll put a bucket for our first baseman. So he'll just flip the ball there. I'm usually on the mound throwing just BP fastballs and trying to get those guys to hit ground balls. Our middle infield and our third base are turning a ton of double plays during that time. And it's all live because there's runners running down on them and that kind of stuff. If someone squares one up right back into the net, I just turn around and roll a ground ball to our middle and let them turn it. So that goes pretty fast. And then we move to runners at first base. And we'll usually put our outfield out for this. And we'll say, there's X amount of outs. You guys defend it. And we'll put a bucket at third base and at second base. So, depending on what happens, those guys are throwing to bases and stuff. And our guys are hitting with less than 2 strikes. And then we'll go runner at second base, 2 strikes, 2 outs. So we'll see a 2-strike adjustment. Outfield still out there. And usually I'll put my full defense out at that point and have, 4 to 6 guys hitting and 7 to 8 guys, depending on who we got out there in the field, whether we want to put a pitcher out or a catcher and take them out or what. And then they got to, line up and throw through home and do some things like that. And so just sort of, you can play lots of games with the situations you're working on and that kind of stuff. But I like the quarters because you get your offensive stuff done, but it's not necessarily that repetition where there's nothing on the line. It's kind of there's something on the line you got to execute. If you don't get the hit and run down, you got to run, touch the right field pole. If you don't get your bunt down, if the defense makes 3 errors in a row, we all stop and we run. And so there's kind of some pieces on it that kind of put a little pressure on them. And then, we'll do that on Monday. And then on Tuesday, we'll do, like you mentioned, Coach, like Coach Polk's defensive drills where you go through and get all those reps, And then on Wednesday, we'll go heavy hitting day and everything's individual that day defensively, that kind of thing. So that's kind of how I structure my team defense stuff. But similar to what you mentioned, Coach, about scripts, I thought that was awesome. I mean, just to be able to do that in an 8 to 10 minute period and get all that stuff done, that's huge. And 21 outs too. I think that's awesome to get all those situations done. So
Cool.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, appreciate it. I
Hey,
will.
notes.
I
Right
love
there.
it. I know.
Right there. Remote learning.
Right.
I'm just glad you learned how to write.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here, and then we can just.